The rusted school bell clanged through the dusty air of Kumasi Secondary School, signaling the end of the final mathematics exam. Kwame didn't move. He sat hunched over his desk, hand frozen mid-equation, eyes scanning the half-blank paper like it might solve itself if he stared long enough. Around him, classmates packed up, cheerful and loud. Their footsteps and laughter faded into the hallway, but Kwame stayed, gripping his pencil until it cracked. "Time's up, Kwame," said Mr. Asante, the math teacher, pausing by his desk. "You did what you could." Kwame didn't look up. His voice was hoarse. "I didn't finish." Mr. Asante sighed. "Sometimes life isn't fair, but the exam is over. Go on now." He left Kwame alone in the echoing classroom, sunlight filtering through cracked windows, landing on his torn notebook held together with tape and prayers. Later that day, Kwame walked through Kumasi's bustling central market, stomach growling, pockets nearly empty. The scent of grilled plantains and roasted corn taunted him. He kept his head down, weaving between stalls, determined to ignore the hunger clawing at him. Then came a voice, warm and familiar. "Kwame." He turned. There she was. Akasua sat behind her mother's kente cloth stall, wearing a bright yellow head wrap that seemed to catch every bit of light. She was counting coins, her quick fingers and quicker smile working in sync. Her eyes sparkled when she saw him. "You look like someone stole your lunch," she teased. "Or your dreams. Which is it?" Kwame forced a smile. "Maybe both. Come here." She waved him over, scooting a plastic stool toward him. "I can't stay long," he said, but sat anyway. She studied him. "What happened?" Kwame hesitated. He looked away, trying to hold his pride together, but the cracks were showing. "I failed," he muttered. "Didn't finish the math exam. I think that's it for university." Akasia's smile vanished. "No, you don't mean that." "I do. There's no second chance. No backup. No money. You think I haven't been trying. My mother cries when she thinks I'm not looking." He laughed bitterly. "All those dreams, me as an engineer, building bridges, helping Kumasi, they're gone." Akasua was quiet for a moment. Then she stood, walked around the stall, and sat beside him. She pulled a small metal tin from her bag, dented, rust-stained, familiar. "What's that?" Kwame asked. "My university savings," she said simply. "From tutoring, helping my mother, sell cloth, doing whatever I could. It's everything. For you." Kwame stared at her like she had grown wings. "No, Akasua, you can't." "I can," she said, gripping his hand. "And I am. You're the smartest person I know. You have to go. You have to. If anyone gets out of this place, it's you." He shook his head, eyes filling. "But what about your dreams? You wanted to be a doctor." "Dreams change," she said, even though it was the biggest lie she'd ever told. He took the tin slowly, like it might disappear if he moved too fast. "I'll pay you back," he whispered. "Every pursuit, I swear. And when I make it, when I'm successful, I'll give you everything you deserve. We'll build the future together, like we always said." Akasua's lips trembled, but she nodded. "Just promise me one more thing." "Anything." "Never forget where you came from, or the people who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself." Kwame looked at her, at the kente fabrics fluttering behind her like flags, at the tree overhead, the old baobab whose roots ran deep and wide. "I promise," he said. They hugged tightly, and neither noticed the wind shift. Neither knew that in that moment, their fates had started spinning in different directions. A month later, Kwame stood outside the gate of the University of Ghana in Accra, backpack slung over one shoulder. The admission letter crumpled from being reread too many times. The place looked nothing like Kumasi. There were paved paths, spotless benches, glowing street lamps. Students walked confidently, heads high, their clothes and conversations a world away from the crowded markets of home. He found his way to the dorms, registered for classes, and moved into a room that had its own desk, lamp, and working fan. "Luxury. He called Akasua that night. "I made it," he said, grinning through the receiver. "I knew you would," she replied. "I told you. I can't believe I'm here. It's different. I can hear it in your voice." They talked for hours, about professors, classes, her market job, his dorm, her younger siblings, his goals. She laughed when he described how he got lost finding the cafeteria. "Keep that laughter," he said. "It's the only thing that makes this place feel like home." Weeks passed, then months. Kwame excelled in his classes, quickly attracting attention from professors. He joined clubs, built connections, and interned with a local engineering firm. His name began to mean something, a name that opened doors. He still called Akaswa. Sometimes, the calls became shorter, less frequent. "Sorry," he would say. "Busy." She never complained, and when he missed her birthday, she simply texted, "I hope today was good for you. Maybe next year, we celebrate together again." He replied 2 days later, "Sorry, been slammed." You know how it is. At the end of his 3rd year, he received a call from Dr. Mensah, his engineering mentor. "Come to my office," the professor said. "I've got big news." Kwame arrived, breathless. "You're in," Dr. Mensah announced, beaming. "Goldstone Engineering. Internship, fast-track position. Starting salary is more than what your entire town makes in a year." Kwame's knees nearly buckled. "You earned it," the professor said. "But remember, stay humble." Kwame smiled, but didn't hear the warning that night. He went out to celebrate with his new friends, mostly children of diplomats and CEOs. He wore a button-down shirt that cost more than his mother's monthly income. He toasted to the future. When he got home, his phone buzzed. A missed call from Akaswa. He didn't call back. Instead, he texted, "Let's catch up soon." Big news. The next morning, Kwame stood in front of the mirror, smoothing his collar. He looked like success. But in the drawer under his bed was a photo to teenagers beneath a massive baobab tree, a dented tin between them, and the promise of a future neither truly understood. Kwame closed the drawer. He didn't notice the photo had bent at the corners, as if trying to fold itself away. The internship at Goldstone Engineering wasn't just prestigious, it was transformative. Kwame's first day was spent walking the corridors of a glass building where the air smelled like filtered success and imported espresso. He had his own ID badge, a sleek laptop, and a seat at the project table. "Speak up," his supervisor, he said in a meeting during his first week. "You've got sharp ideas, let them hear you." So Kwame did. He talked about sustainable infrastructure, regional equity, and development in underserved communities. The partners nodded, impressed. His name quickly made its way into conversations that opened other doors, and those doors led to dinners, private meetings, and invitations to circles he once thought were myth. Soon he wasn't just Kwame from Kumasi, he was Kwame Mensah, the young engineer everyone was watching. It was at one of those networking events, a rooftop mixer under Accra's star-soaked sky, that he met UCHE. She was magnetic, tall, poised, her laughter low and confident. A lawyer fresh out of Oxford, daughter of a powerful contractor. Her words carried the certainty of someone who had never needed to beg or compromise to be heard. "Goldstone Engineering, right," she said, extending her hand. "You're the one who worked on the Time Bridge proposal." Kwame blinked. "You know about that, of course. My father reviewed it last week. He was impressed." They talked for 2 hours that night, about Ghana's infrastructure gap, about law and policy, about legacy. It was the first time in months Kwame didn't think of home. Akaswa texted that evening, "How's the new job? Miss hearing your voice." He saw it, didn't reply. In the weeks that followed, Oma became a regular fixture in Kwame's life, professionally and personally. They went to charity events, hosted joint presentations, laughed over overpriced cocktails. She introduced him to art galleries and fine dining. He introduced her to development models and field research. Together, they were a vision, brains and ambition, elegance and execution. One night, after a fundraiser, Oma rested her head on his shoulder. "I like you, Kwame," she murmured. "You make me feel like the future is still fixable." He kissed her, briefly thinking of a girl in Kumasi who used to say the same thing in different words. Back in Kumasi, Akaswa was sweating under the fluorescent lights of the Anakai market, counting coins for a customer who bought half a yard of cloth. Her days were stitched together by long hours, endless bargaining, tutoring schoolchildren in the evenings, and caring for her mother, who now coughed more than she spoke. The hospital had run tests. The results were bad. Pneumonia layered over existing complications. Treatment would be costly and urgent. That night, she called Kwame. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. Finally, she texted Kwame. "It's serious. My mom's not doing well. We need help. The doctors say it's urgent. I know you're busy, but if there's anything you can do, please." She waited, watched the screen, watched the clock. The reply came the next day. "Sent GHS 500. Hope it helps. Been slammed with work." Call you soon, GHS 500. Enough for 2 days of medication. Maybe. Akosua stared at the message, then at her mother, asleep on a thin mattress, a damp cloth on her forehead. She closed her eyes and let the silence settle deep into her chest. Meanwhile, in East Legon, Kwame was choosing a ring, a custom-cut diamond, imported, the kind of ring that said permanence, prestige, and public approval. The jeweler smiled as he slid velvet trays across the glass. Planning something special? He asked. Kwame nodded. I'm going to propose. That's a lucky woman. He forced a smile. She is. He walked out holding a box that shimmered in the sun, yet felt oddly heavy in his pocket. That evening, Oma FaceTimed him from her apartment. I've been thinking, she said. My dad's planning to expand into West Africa. Construction, legal infrastructure, policy consulting. We'd make a great team, you and me. Kwame grinned. I like the sound of that. She tilted her head. You've been quiet lately. Something wrong? He shook his head. Just pressure. Big project coming. She smiled. Pressure makes diamonds. Mr. Mensah. Akosua boiled water over a charcoal stove, waiting for it to cool enough to give her mother a sponge bath. Her siblings were asleep. Mercy, her best friend, arrived with a thermos and silent compassion. He sent 500, Mercy asked, disbelieving. Akosua nodded. He's living in Legon now, right, with suits and a corner office. Another nod, girl. It's okay, Akosua said quietly, not looking up. He's busy. He's building something. Too busy to answer your call when your mother's dying. Akosua flinched. She didn't reply. Kwami stood on a beach lit by candles and rose petals, the Atlantic crashing behind him, Uma's laughter dancing through the wind. He knelt in the sand, heart racing. Oma J, he said, opening the ring box. You've shown me a world I didn't know existed. You understand my dreams, my vision. Will you marry me? Her yes was immediate, bright, powerful. They kissed as the waves clapped behind them, and champagne was uncorked from a chilled silver bucket. Kwame didn't hear the wind, changed direction, didn't feel the silence coming for him like a slow tide. 2 days later, Akosua sat in the hospital's family waiting room, hollow-eyed and pale. Her mother's body was being prepared for burial. The surgery hadn't happened. The money hadn't come. She stared at the last message on her phone. Hope it helps. It hadn't. Mercy placed a gentle hand on her back. I'm so sorry, Akosua. Wiped her face slowly. I begged him. You gave up your future for him. Not anymore, she whispered. He can keep his world. I'll survive. Mine. She stood, shoulders squared, spine straight, the grief burning into resolve. Far away, Kwame raised a toast. Somewhere in between, the promise beneath the baobab began to crack. The sun rose slowly over Kumasi, dull and reluctant, as if the sky itself mourned what had been lost. The narrow streets were unusually quiet. In the courtyard of Akosua's family home, plastic chairs were lined in uneven rows, and women in black surrounded steaming pots of rice and stew, their songs soft and sorrowful. The wake had begun. Akosua sat under a faded canopy, her mother's portrait propped on a wooden table draped in cloth. Her eyes were dry, not for lack of grief, but because her body had run out of tears. The traditional mourning cloth wrapped around her slim frame seemed too heavy for her shoulders. Her silence weighed more than the drums, echoing softly from the compound wall. Mercy hovered nearby, intercepting guests, offering tissues and tea. She watched the gate every few minutes, and when the black SUV pulled up, her heart sank. Kwami stepped out slowly. He wore a tailored black suit, tie perfect, shoes polished. He looked every bit the successful man he had become. But there was something hollow in the way he moved, a stiffness, like his clothes didn't belong to him anymore. As he walked into the courtyard, heads turned. Some recognized him, others just stared, sensing a foreign presence. Akosua did not look up. Kwami. I saw her sitting beside the casket and hesitated. His hand tightened around the envelope in his jacket. A donation. Guilt money. It suddenly felt like ash. Let me talk to her, he said to Mercy. She stepped in front of him. She doesn't want to see you, please. Mercy studied his face. You waited too long. I didn't know. She called you. She begged. Kwami's throat tightened. I was busy. She says the Kwami she knew died a long time ago. She's not interested in meeting the stranger who took his place. Before he could respond, a voice called from across the courtyard. Kwami. Akosua was standing now, hands folded in front of her. eyes sharp and calm in a way that scared him more than if she'd screamed. "I'll speak to him," she said. Outside they stood at the edge of the compound, under the shade of the same baobab tree, where once they'd made promises with nothing but faith and foolish youth. Kwame tried to find words. "I'm so sorry, Akesua. I should have been there." "I stop." Her voice cut through the air like a blade. "You don't get to apologize yet. First, you listen." He nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn leather-bound journal. She opened it to a brittle, yellowed page and held it up. "This is a letter," she said, "from the University of Cape Coast. 6 years ago, I had been accepted. Full scholarship. Medicine." Kwame blinked. His breath caught in his chest. "I never told you," Akosua continued, voice trembling but firm, "because if I had, you would have never taken the money. And I needed you to succeed more than I needed anything else." She flipped to another page, a photocopy of a payment notice. "My spot was conditional. They needed registration fees to hold it. I had saved most of it. That's the tin I gave you." Kwame staggered back a step. You gave me your scholarship money." She nodded. "I deferred my dream, telling myself it was temporary, that when you got on your feet, you'd remember, that we'd build something together, like we always said." He pressed a hand to his chest. "It hurt to breathe, but I did remember," he whispered. "I always thought of you." She laughed, hollow, sharp. "You remembered me while proposing to another woman on a private beach." He looked down, ashamed. Double quotes. "Do you know what it feels like," she said, voice rising, "to hold your mother's hand while she begs for breath, to call the one person you believed in, the one person you gave everything to, and hear silence?" Kwame's voice broke. "I sent what I could. You sent pocket change, Kwame, and then you disappeared." The wind rustled the trees, branches, scattering leaves at their feet. "You built your life on my sacrifice," she said softly. "And when it was time to return that faith, you vanished." He sank onto the bench beneath the baobab, burying his face in his hands. I didn't know what you gave up. You didn't ask." Her voice was brittle now. "You didn't care enough to ask." They were still in silence when a second car arrived. A silver Mercedes pulled into the dusty road outside the compound. The door opened, and Oma stepped out, heels clicking against the gravel. Her hair was perfectly set, her dress understated but expensive, her expression worried. She spotted Kwame, then Akosua, then the casket, the mourners, the cloth. "Kwame," she called, confused. "What is this? Why are you?" Akosua turned slowly. Their eyes met. Am. Amma stopped walking. She looked at Kwami, then at Akosua, then at the journal in Akosua's hand, and she understood. "Who is she?" Oma asked quietly. Kwame stood. "Oma, I want to hear it from her." Akosua didn't hesitate. "I'm the reason your fiancé is who he is. I gave him my future so he could build his." Uma's face drained of color. "You what?" I was supposed to be a doctor. I had everything in place. I gave it up to send him to university." Amma looked at Kwame, stunned. "Is that true?" He nodded slowly, shame crashing over him. "And you didn't think that was worth mentioning?" she whispered. "I didn't know how," he said. "I was afraid you'd see me differently." She took a step back. "I do see you differently." Her voice shook now, not with volume, but with the force of betrayal. "All this time, I thought we were equals, that we chose each other from a place of honesty. But you lied by omission. You let me build a future with you on a foundation someone else paid for." She turned to Akosua. "I don't know you," Oma said, "but you deserve better than him." Akosua didn't respond. Oma took off her engagement ring, the stone still catching the light, and handed it to Kwame. "I can't marry someone who forgets the hands that lifted him, because one day, you'll forget mine too." Then she turned and walked away. Kwame didn't follow. He dropped to the bench again, clutching the ring. Akosua sat beside him after a long moment, not close, but not far. "I don't hate you," she said. He looked at her, eyes rimmed with red. "You should." "No," she said. "Hating you would mean I still care enough to hurt. I don't. I buried that with my mother." Kwame stared at the ring in his palm. It sparkled, soulless. "What do I do now?" he whispered. She stood. "You figure out who you want to be. Not for me, for yourself." Then she walked back into the compound, her steps steady. The silence around her impossibly loud. And Kwame remained under the baobab tree, alone, with nothing but the weight of his own choices. The funeral was over. The chairs had been stacked. The borrowed canopy returned. The women had taken the last pots of uneaten stew home. Kumasi's skies were dull again, heavy with dust and silence. Kwame hadn't left. He sat alone on the stone steps of the funeral home, his expensive black suit now wrinkled and dust-stained. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands still clenched around the engagement ring that had lost all meaning. He'd barely slept, couldn't eat, couldn't leave. He watched the early morning sun rise over the market stalls. He once passed as a boy, watched Akoswa's younger brother carry a basin of laundry with quiet determination, watched the life he had abandoned move on without him. Footsteps approached. He looked up to Akoswa. Her face was pale, but steady, her black mourning cloth still wrapped around her. In her hands, a leather journal, aged and familiar, and a yellowed manila envelope, edges frayed. "I need to show you something," she said quietly. Kwame stood, heart hammering. "Akoswa, I didn't sleep. I've been waiting." She cut him off. "No more talking. Just listen." They sat on the steps together, a few feet apart. As the town around them began to wake, she opened the journal slowly. "After I gave you that tin," she said, "I kept this journal. I wrote everything down, every opportunity I passed. Every day I told myself, when he succeeds, we'll both rise." She flipped through pages filled with tight, neat handwriting, clippings, photos. "And this," she said, pulling out the letter from the envelope, "was my last chance. I applied for a second scholarship a year later, got accepted to a nursing school, couldn't pay the deposit. I wrote to organizations, begged for help. No one responded." She folded the paper again. "I sold fabric, tutored kids, sewed, scrubbed floors. I survived, but the door never opened again." Kwame was weeping now, openly, no longer trying to stop the collapse. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "I did," she replied, evenly. "You just weren't listening. I called. I left messages. You sent transfers instead of replies. I thought I was helping." "No," she said. "You were paying to forget, to silence your guilt." He looked at her, eyes swollen. "What do you want me to do? Just tell me. I'll fix this." Akoswa turned the journal to a specific page and pointed to a line she had written. "Success without integrity is just elegant failure. That's what I want you to understand," she said. "You climbed, but you did it by stepping on someone who loved you. That's not success, Kwame. That's abandonment with a ribbon on it." He buried his face in his hands. "You hate me." She shook her head. "I don't." "Then, give me a chance. Not for us. For you. For the promise." She stood. "You already had your chance with me, and you used it to build a world I don't belong in." He looked up, broken. "Then what's left?" "Purpose," she said. "That's what's left." Weeks passed. Akoswa returned to Kumasi with her shoulders squared, her eyes sharper, her voice firmer. The grief hadn't disappeared, but she'd stopped waiting for someone else to lift her. She took the little money she had saved and expanded her mother's old kente stole. She sold not just cloth, but accessories, launched a tutoring center for young girls behind the shop, designed reusable school kits, learned budgeting, applied, and got accepted into a part-time nursing program in Accra. She was older than most students. Didn't matter. She had scars. They gave her clarity. She worked in the mornings, took classes in the afternoons, studied at night under a single bulb in a shared dormitory. Sometimes she'd reread the journal and cry, but most days she just kept moving. Kwame, too, changed. He packed up his apartment in East Legon, cancelled the car lease, sold his suits, donated the designer shoes, moved into a modest studio near the University of Ghana, closer to the students, who reminded him of who he used to be. He withdrew from the company's social events, declined dinners, rejected job offers overseas. The silence that followed was brutal, but necessary. He used his remaining savings to create the blueprint for something new, a scholarship fund for promising but under-resourced students from rural areas. He named it the Akoswa Memorial Fund, not because she was dead, but because her dreams had once been sacrificed. He would make sure others didn't have to make the same choice. Their paths didn't cross again for months. But the ripple effects began to show. Students in Kumasi started applying to universities with real hope. Parents came to meetings about funding options they never believed were possible. Young girls saw Akoswa in her nursing scrubs and began to whisper, "I want to be like her." Kwame spent his days mentoring students, speaking at schools, building solar-powered classrooms, designing clean water systems. He paid attention now, really paid attention to people's voices, to their silences, to the spaces between what was said and what was meant. He didn't reach out to Akasua, not because he didn't think of her, but because now, finally, he respected her space. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the red clay rooftops of Kumasi, Mercy sat across from Akasua at her small kitchen table. "You've changed," Mercy said, sipping tea. "So have you," Akasua replied. They laughed softly. "Have you heard from him?" Akasua shook her head. "But I've heard of him. The fund, the projects, the speeches, and I'm glad," she said. "Not for him, for the students, for what it means." Mercy leaned in. "Do you still love him?" Akasua stared into her tea, then smiled, sad but solid. "I think I stopped loving the person he became, but I'll always honor the boy who sat with me under the baobab tree." Across town, Kwame stood at the back of a community center, watching a group of children receive books. One of them turned and grinned at him. "Are you the engineer guy?" the boy asked. "Kwam, I knelt. "Maybe. Why?" "My teacher says you build bridges." Kwame smiled, eyes glinting. "I try," he said. "I try very hard." It was a warm morning in Kumasi, the kind of morning where light settled gently on red clay roads and the smell of charcoal fires blended with blooming hibiscus. The school of Kumasi Secondary buzzed with anticipation. Folding chairs lined up beneath colorful canopies. Mothers in headwraps and fathers in clean shirts stood proudly with phones raised, ready to capture a moment. But the focus wasn't on them. All eyes turned to the podium, and the man behind it. Kwame adjusted the microphone. He no longer wore tailored suits, instead, a simple, crisp white shirt and slacks. No tie, no flash, just clarity. Behind him stood a banner with bold letters, Akasua Memorial Scholarship Fund, First Annual Graduation Ceremony, 50 students, first-generation university candidates, fully funded tuition, materials, meals, and crucially, financial stipends for their families so no child would have to choose between school and survival. Kwami cleared his throat. "When I was your age," he began, "I thought success was about leaving this place, about escaping poverty, about becoming someone important far from here." He paused. "But someone once showed me that true success doesn't come from how far you go, but from how many people you lift as you rise." He looked at the audience, and for a moment, his eyes found her. Akosua, seated in the third row, wearing pale blue nursing scrubs, clipboard in hand, her hair tied back. Her eyes were calm, older than they once were, but wiser too. Their eyes met, not the gaze of lovers, not even friends, just to people who had survived each other, and still chose to build. 6 months earlier, the fund had started small. A few donors, Kwame's own savings, grants he fought hard to secure through endless proposals and night-long revisions. The name, Akosua Memorial, raised eyebrows. "Is she?" one board member had asked. Kwame shook his head. "She's very much alive, but her dream was sacrificed so mine could live. This fund is named after what she gave up, and what we're giving back." They had nodded, speechless. Kwame moved back to Kumasi soon after, not to visit, to stay. He bought a modest house near the market, fixed the broken windows, and installed solar panels himself. When the town's water system failed, he didn't write reports he got in the trenches, drew blueprints on napkins, dug with the workers, showed up. Every project funded local labor. He refused to import expertise. He trained apprentices, gave contracts to women-run cooperatives, built libraries with open doors and after-school programs that paid students a meal for every 2 hours of study. He didn't broadcast his work, but Kumasi noticed. Meanwhile, at Anakai Teaching Hospital, Akasua's name began to carry weight. She worked double shifts, cared for children with compassion and precision, earned the respect of physicians twice her age. Her reputation for both skill and empathy led to an offer, head of pediatric care within the year. "You've got the mind of a doctor," her supervisor told her, "and the heart of a healer." She didn't cry, but that night, alone in her shared flat, she took out the old journal. The pages were worn, the ink faded. She flipped to a familiar line. "Some dreams don't die. They just wait." And she whispered, "We made it, Ma." The day of the scholarship ceremony came. Kwame finished his speech and stepped down. Students lined up to receive certificates. many of them trembling with disbelief. A few parents wept quietly, gripping the hands of sons and daughters they never expected to see in uniform. Behind the crowd, Akosua turned to leave. She had come only for the students, not for him, but Mercy nudged her. "He's looking." Akosua turned. Kwami stood just beyond the platform, holding 2 cups of sobi, olo. He offered one. She hesitated, then walked over, took it. They sat on the edge of the steps, like 2 strangers bound by a shared ghost. Neither spoke for a while. Then Kwami said, "This is yours as much as mine." She sipped her drink. "I didn't do any of this." "You did everything," he replied, "even if I didn't see it at the time." She looked at him then, eyes searching his face, not for apology, but for change, and she saw it. Not the boy she loved, not the man who betrayed her. Someone new. "You ever wish we'd ended up differently?" he asked. Akosua smiled, soft and real. "I used to, but not anymore." He nodded. "Me neither." They clinked plastic cups, gently, no promises. No what dash ifs. Just peace. Later that week, Kwami returned to the baobab tree. It still stood wide, trunk, deep roots, branches reaching like open arms, toward the sky. Children now played around it, climbing, laughing. One carved their initials in the bark. Kwami touched a faded heart-shaped mark from years ago. He remembered the tin, the tears, the oath whispered in desperation. He sat beneath it again, as he had so many times before. This time, with no one beside him, and for the first time that felt okay. He pulled a notebook from his bag. On the first page, he wrote, "Legacy is not what we leave behind, it's what we plant in others that continues to grow." And he closed the book. The wind rustled the leaves. In Kumasi, people began to tell a story of a girl who gave everything, of a boy who lost himself, and how they both found their way back, not to each other, but to who they were always meant to be. The baobab tree remained, tall and ancient, keeper of truths and promises, and every year, when the scholarship letters went out, a line was printed at the bottom. "Success is not what we achieve for ourselves, but what we make possible for others." If you watched until the end, comment the word roots, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends and family.